basically a summary of what I'm going to talk about is that there are outstanding careers. Okay, you've got your recording going. There are outstanding careers in the energy and petroleum industry that are going to be available for a long, long time yet. So I think some people think that, well, this is a fading industry. That's not true. And we're going to talk about reasons why that this is an exciting area to work in. I will also tell you why it's important to have a strong technical background. Okay, and you should accompany that with things like business and demonstration of things like teamwork, because these are going to be the requirements to build a successful career in an energy industry. You know, geoscientists, I use geoscientists to group up a group of people who are geologists, physicists, geophysicists, petrophysicists, production engineers, and then engineers, which include reservoir engineers, production engineers, etc. These make up the key roles that are going to be important with the energy addition. And you'll see this term as I use it throughout. I'm not going to talk about the energy transition. I'm going to talk about the energy addition, and we're going to talk about how that's going to help build a global future. And then finally, I want you to realize that geoscientists have a unique set of skills that are really translatable across all kinds of areas, not only in the energy industry, but in very, very broad areas. And we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. And just a little picture showing the integration between some model building and some interpretation of seismic data, the typical things that geoscientists are involved with historically. So my outline, I'm going to give you a brief introduction of myself. Then we're going to talk a little bit about understanding the petroleum energy industry. And then we're going to talk about what the essential skills for success are. Talk about what the pathways, how you go about gaining experience and getting into the industry and making a path for yourself there. And then we're going to talk about once your foot's in the door, once you're on that path, what are the key steps in building a career in the industry? There will be challenges along the way. I'm sure many of you have already faced challenges. There will always be key aspects to overcome those challenges. I'll talk about the energy addition at the end, and then I'll end with some conclusions. So who am I? As Bob mentioned, my name's Rocky DiTomo, and I got a PhD in nuclear physics at Ohio State University. Okay, but since then, 33 years as a geoscientist with Shell Oil and 11 years as an energy industry consultant. You can see I've lived in various places. Part of our industry is, the industry moves around. If you're good, where you're needed, the demand for your expertise will span the world. And I've lived in a number of cities, some cities more than once. Presently, I'm in the east coast of Florida, right near Cape Canaveral, when I watched the rocket launches, one of which took off yesterday, as a matter of fact. And then, just a few things overall about me in the industry. 42 years with SEG. 28 years with EAGE, 42 I think were mentioned by Ba on his introduction, but it is, I want to mention, I was the 2012 Africa and Middle East honorary lecturer, and I gave a lecture in Accra in Ghana, and recently SEG Life Membership Award. So one of your key questions is, how did I get from here? What you see on the left is a picture of a Van de Graaff accelerator that accelerates charged particles to near the speed of light, collides them with other particles, and creates a scattering of pieces that fly out, of which you measure. So that's kind of particle scattering, nuclear physics that I did in college. And how did I get from there to here? This is a floating drill rig out in the Gulf of Mexico that I worked with. So that might be an interesting transition that you have a question of. And the answer is, if you have a strong technical background, if you can demonstrate that that you're good at teamwork, if you can demonstrate that you learn well, the opportunities that are available to work in most technical industries will be there for you. So let's talk about understanding the energy industry, because I certainly didn't understand the energy industry when I joined it, because it spans a great deal of stuff. On the bottom is just a picture again of a model that a geologist built, a 3D model, and it was built based upon looking at seismic. On the right is a picture of some relatively recent seismic measured from one of the new technologies is so important. Disciplinary team. No one person is going to have all the information or all the skills necessary for each of the technical areas that they're currently working in. So multidisciplinary teamwork is an absolute must. If you can't work within the team environment and you're just an individual contributor, you might be able to work in a research role, but you're never going to be able to be really, really successful in the energy industry in general. This is a key thing. Technology changes very rapidly in this business. Okay, that means you have to be part of a learning organization, and you have to demonstrate that you're a learning person. The technologies that were in place when I joined the energy industry, things like using punched cards to go ahead and program computers. Production, it's finding the energy, it's producing the energy, and then it's getting it into the transport system. Midstream is the transport. It used to be just pipelines, but now a tremendous amount of energy moves in other ways. It moves as you see here, an LNG tanker. It moves in other kinds of ways. We're talking about moving energy, perhaps even through other transmitted capabilities. And so midstream is an important part of our business. And then we've got the downstream, which is the refining and the retail. Most companies don't do all of these. Only a few large, what's called integrated oil and gas companies do all these. Only a few, even national oil companies, do all these. Many companies rely on one or two of these things. So you all know who the major international oil companies are. They do all three. Energy diversity. What do I mean by energy diversity? Well, energy diversity is not just using oil, not just using gas, but using other forms of energy. And other forms of energy, such as wind, here's a picture of an offshore wind farm, carbon capture, which is a way of mitigating the carbon that's generated when hydrocarbons are burned, or other types of equipment is done. And geothermal, which is a rapidly growing area in order to accumulate and generate and capture energy. All of these, require geoscientists and geotechnical engineers. Every one of these types of energy require that kind of experience. The carbon capture people and the geothermal people have to have a subsurface description. The wind people have to understand the geokinetics of where the platforms sit and what the electrical cables are laying on the seafloor. So all of these things require the same expertise as looking for oil and gas. So what do you have to do? Now that you understand the energy industry, you have to build the necessary skills. This is what many of you are doing right now. You're at the beginning stages of that. You have to build technical skills. You have to build skills in physics, geology, engineering, chemistry, mathematics, any combination of those. You have to be really good at least one or two of those, and you have to know something about the others. You have to build analytical skills. This is one of the real valuable assets to people in our industry. You have to analyze data. You have to understand some things about machine learning and problem solving. Okay. Risk assessment, understanding what risk is, understanding how to mitigate it. You have to be creative, right? You have to have curiosity. So when you see something that doesn't look what you expect, you have to be curious enough to figure it out. And you have to understand something about economics. You have to be a good communicator, and you have to be able to lead. You have to be able to lead within your team. You have to be able to talk with people and negotiate. You have to be able to give presentations. You have to engage stakeholders, and you have to talk with them and your management. And you have to be able to communicate the information that you have, that your team has, actively to different people. That means changing the way you communicate and changing what you communicate to meet the needs of the audience that you have, right? So you have to learn, you have to practice, and you have to demonstrate these skills. And then you're going to need to be adaptive and resilient, right? You have to can be a continuous learner, and you have to be able to thrive under uncertainty. Some people don't do well under uncertainty, but you have to be able to thrive under it, and you have to be able to embrace change. You got to welcome it. You got to take advantage of it. You got to look at change as an opportunity, not as something that you have to do, right? It's an opportunity to make a step forward. So when I say there's an opportunity, lots of opportunities will come your way. Some people shy away from opportunities. I recommend you take advantage of every opportunity that comes your way. Okay, there are opportunities while you're in academia. Sure, you're working on a degree, but are you taking diverse coursework, or are you taking very narrow coursework? Are you participating in outreach programs? Are you contributing more broadly than just studying one narrow technical area? What kind of professional skills are you developing? Are you working to get certifications? Are you a member of professional societies? Are you working on other kinds of university projects where you can get broad skills that aren't just academic and coursework related? How are you going to get practical experience? And you're at the beginning of those if you're at university. But if you're a young professional, these things are still available. There are internships, co-op participation, programs such as SEG's Evolve or AAPG's Imperial Barrel Award. These are opportunities to get a hint of practical experience. And then always don't be shy about taking entry-level positions. Things like working on the field or as someone's assistant or a technician. These are important skills to kind of get your foot in the door and learn more about the industry so that you can focus on what you really want to do and the skills that are necessary to do them. And again, like I said, continuous learning. There are lots of opportunities for continuous learning. Participating in this particular lecture is an opportunity for continuous learning. There are plenty of online courses, many of them free. Well, as we said, lectures, participating in social media and the networks out there on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, the rest of them. And then going to technical meetings when you have the opportunity, and thinking about experiential opportunities. Experiential opportunities are opportunities where you get hands-on to do something. Okay? Little saying I always thought: the road to success is not a path you find, but it's a trail you blaze. You have to build that path. Okay? It's not going to be laid out in front of you. You have to build the path and make success happen. So now you get into the career, into the industry. How do you build a career? It's not too young or not too early to start doing this. Participate. Get involved with a number of diverse groups. Give talks. Don't be shy. Publish papers, right? Join committees, especially join committees, because that's where you will meet a tremendous group of peers and build your network. And I always recommend that, especially young people, seek out a senior mentor. Seek out somebody that you can talk to in a risk-free environment and bounce ideas and talk about concerns that you have, because they will be able to give you some ideas on what your options, path forward are. You will eventually climb a career ladder. It's not a simple ladder. It's not climbing one rung at a time. Sometimes a rung will break and you'll slip down, but you need to set clear goals for yourself. What do you want to get done at the end of this year? What do you want to be doing in 5 years? What do you want to be doing in 10 years? Okay. Be professionally diverse. The area you're working in now could evaporate in a year or two, right? I knew a lot of people who were working onshore oil that evaporated completely for about 5 years. And then what do you know? All of a sudden, people discovered there was unconventional resources, and onshore oil and gas exploration took off again. So be diverse. And then, always take on challenges. What I always tell the young people who've worked for me is you should always seek to be the very best, an expert in what you're doing now. Okay. But while you're doing that, learn as much as you can about the other people and the other technical fields that you're connecting with. If all you do is stay focused on what you're doing and you don't know how your results are being used in the next step, then you're missing the opportunity. So you should always understand where your data comes from and what impacted it, and where your information, your results are going to, and what happens next, and how they impact what happens. And then an important thing is always value and protect your reputation, okay? Don't do things that are foolish. Be consistent, be professional, always look to give excellence, and a really important one is dependability and delivery. If you have a reputation for saying, I will deliver this in a month, and you always deliver it, okay, that reputation will go a long way. If you make promises that aren't kept, they will follow you. And then finally, let's talk about overcoming challenges. I mentioned there will be challenges. Okay, here's an example of a challenge. On the bottom is a plot of the price of oil in black in actual terms of the day, and in red corrected for the value today. And you can see the price of oil has gone up and it's crashed down, up and down. It's highly volatile. We're in a volatile, energy is a volatile industry. You have to be technically flexible and broad in your skills. How do you survive the downs? Well, number one, if you're technically one of the best people around and you're demonstrating you're delivering value, you're going to be kept, okay? You're going to be there. And if you're not, you're going to still be in demand, and it's easy to pick up that opportunity with someone else. Make sure your CV is kept up to date. I update mine every 6 months, even if I've not changed anything that I'm doing. It's a good idea to keep it up to date, because if you wait 10 or 15 years, you won't remember all the things you actually did. Okay. One of the other key challenges is, as I mentioned earlier, advancing technology. Okay. When I started in oil and gas, the deepest platform was in about 350 feet of water. Okay. Obviously now there's production taking place in 10,000 feet of water. The technologies that happened over that time in order to make that capable span all kinds of engineering, materials, exploration, geology, a whole range of technologies that grew and matured over time. The industry will look nothing like, over your career, will look nothing like it looks today. I can guarantee that. And then I recommend you maintain a work-life balance. Know what your priorities are. Make time for family, okay? I always told my people, work smarter, not always harder. There are times where you will have to work very hard, but always look to work smart, okay? And you might consider, I mentioned having a mentor earlier, you might also consider having a life coach, someone who doesn't know very much about your technical aspects of it, but can coach you on how to maintain some kind of balance in your life and your priorities. So I want to talk now about the energy addition. Okay, I told you what a career looks like, what my career looked like, because all those issues happened during my career. Let's talk about things that might be impacting your career. And one of the key ones is the energy addition. You notice I crossed out transition. I don't like that word. We are not going to replace the petroleum. We are not going to replace the energy derived from petroleum products in any future that is foreseeable. Okay, so we're not going to transition to green energy. We're going to add a lot of green energy. Okay, we need to add a lot of green energy, and we need to figure out how to best do that. So, and I want to point out what you mean by the energy addition and how it impacts you depends on where you are. And those of you in Ghana and those of you in Africa are probably highly aware of this. The US and Europe, when we talk about energy, they're focusing on a shift from fossil-based energy to renewable energy sources. They're trying to reduce the total amount of energy that they use, and they're trying to reduce the amount of oil and gas that they need. Okay, but if you're in the Middle East, the whole economy is based on oil and gas. You don't want to reduce oil and gas. What you want to do is reduce your emissions. So you're going to try to get a drive to net zero emissions. This is what they mean by the energy addition moving forward. And if you're in developing countries, you need to aspire to give energy for all. You need to improve the quality of life and the access to energy that people have. And that's the number one thing. And yeah, the getting it from wind or from solar, if it's economic, makes sense. But number one is getting them energy. So there's a very different look at how you look at energy from different places in the world. And what's driving this? Well, what we call ESG, environmental, social, right? So, and every company now measures these. So there are a set of standards. Okay, most governments are measuring these now, and it's a way for investors to screen the investments by looking at what the ESG of a particular project or the ESG of a particular company looks like. And these are reported. So you can see in Nigeria has a reporting center for all their ESG. Okay, and by environmental, we're talking about the performance as a steward of nature. Okay. Are you stewarding? Do you have a good stewardship for maintaining nature in the proper balance? Social, do you have good relationships, positive relationships with not only the community and customers, but with employees and suppliers? And governance, this is your leadership, your internal controls. Do you have transparency? Do you recognize shareholder rights? So ESG, important aspects for you to understand going forward in the energy industry. And who's driving energy addition? Obviously society, okay, especially young people in the West who want to change the way and have less of an impact on the earth and obviously on climate change. Now, if we talk about climate change, there are several scenarios going forward. This little chart on the right shows you where we were in 2018 in terms of the energy mix for the world, okay? And then you see where the red arrow is, that's the aspiration. That's net zero in 2050. Take a look at how big the renewables column is, okay? And it is reduced at the expense of oil, gas, and at coal especially. Now, that is a very, very aggressive look, because you can see to even do it rapidly, the bar to the left, okay, to even do it rapidly would require a considerable amount of work, okay, and it's not likely, okay, it's not currently not happening fast enough. And you can see business as usual, we don't reach that. So, there are a few things. We don't know exactly where we'll be in 2050, but we do know a few things. We know that it's not going to happen overnight. This is going to require continuous work in order to get to net zero. It is highly dependent upon how serious the governments are, how serious energy companies are, and how serious people are, the consumers. Okay, if the consumers continue to consume and don't give the energy, the net zero requirements they're due, it's going to be very difficult to reach it by 2050. And the other thing that's obvious, you take a look at the graph there, petroleum is going to be with us for many years to come. Let's talk a little bit about carbon management. So carbon capture is a growing area, and you can see by 2050, the needs to grow carbon capture capability is going to grow by 140 times. That means there's going to be a lot of need for geoscientists and engineers to work in the technologies of carbon capture. So there are three key things to carbon capture, right? You have to capture the carbon and you have to store it underground. One is the rock formations have to be able to accept the carbon, which means you need space for it down there. Two, the pores have to be connected. So you have to be able to access a large area from a small location that you inject. And that means you need good permeability so that the carbon the CO2 can move throughout the formation. And three, you have to have some way to seal it in there so that you can be guaranteed that that carbon dioxide is going to stay in that formation for 10, 20, 50, 100 years or more. And that means geology and geophysical data is the key, not only to figure out where to put it, but also to monitor it and make sure it's staying in place. So these are all technologies that exist today, and I'm sure there are going to be new technologies that grow over your career. Now, the hard part, why? Why do we need so much energy? Why can't we cut back? And the answer is simple. The world population is growing. In 2020, the world population was 7.8 billion people. By 2050, it'll be 9.7 billion people. And although the rate of population growth has slowed down, the number of people on the planet is going to continue to grow. And those people all want access to energy, right? And so, but access to the energy and how much energy you need is different in different parts of the world. In the developed part of the world, Europe and North America, the big problem is everybody loves stuff, right? And we want lots of stuff. We want nice new phones and lots of good washing machines and new kinds of equipment and cool things. The problem is that most of this stuff is made out of petroleum, right? Petroleum drives a lot of our transportation in terms of fuel. It drives the creation of plastics, fertilizers. Most fertilizers are built upon petroleum products. Detergents and cleaning things are built upon petroleum products. Most electricity in the US and in many developed parts of the world is derived from burning hydrocarbons. And the pharmaceutical industry, most of your medicines have petroleum-based products, different kinds of hydrocarbon bases. So that means that, that there's a huge demand for that. And that stuff isn't all easily replaced. And you say about, well, what about renewable energy? Recognize that renewable energy uses petroleum products too. If you're going to mine and refine minerals, what are you going to mine it with? What's the equipment that you're mining with run on? Okay. What kind of things are you going to use petroleum products for in order to refine those minerals, those big plants? Okay. Solar panels. What are solar panels made out of? Right? Think about all the hydrocarbons that go into building and making that solar panel and to manufacturing it. Batteries. Batteries require minerals. Again, it goes back to how much energy and how green is the creation of some of these things. Wind turbines. Does anybody here know what the actual turbine blades are made out of? They're made out of a fiberglass base with a metal sheathing over it. Do you know that they wear out in a matter of a few years? And what happens to them? Are they recycled? Well, right now, recycling a windmill blade is very expensive. So typically they're discarded, in many cases buried. Okay, that's not good use, right? So we have to find better ways to do the renewable energy space as well. Are we going to change our behavior in order to not use so much energy in the developed world? Well, that's a key question. We'll see. And then what about the developing world? Here's a picture of from One World Data that shows number of people in the world without access to clean fuel for cooking. And you can see, strong area, a lot of people in Asia and a lot of people in Africa don't have access to clean fuels for cooking, right? Something as basic as that. What we're talking about is energy equity. There's not energy equity across the world. right? And so 2.6 billion people don't even have access to clean fuels for cooking. So are we going to tell them they can't cook? Obviously not. We need to find a way to get clean fuels to them. So that's a different issue than just getting to renewables. It's about getting them the best way to have access to energy. 770 million people on this planet, almost a billion, have no access to electricity. So to say, hey, we're going to make electricity green is not necessarily a solution. I don't think we're going to run copper wires out to the middle of the bush, right? What we got to do is we got to find other solutions. This is a quote from Dr. Scott Tinker. If you've never seen any of his TED Talks, you might go look him up. But his quote is, energy doesn't end poverty, but you cannot get out of poverty without energy, right? So we have to provide better energy equity across the world, across the globe. And there are a lot of very, very cool small technologies that can go forward to doing that. Minerals, we talked about minerals. On the left is a picture of a lithium mine, right? This is lithium that's derived out of fluids, and then you evaporate the fluids and you end up with the lithium as one of the mineral products left behind. You know, things like lithium, cobalt, manganese, and copper are all in high growing demand. And so efficient mining is a key area. One, finding the minerals. Two, efficiently mining the minerals and tracking them in the earth. And three, getting them to market to be used. Again, requires geologists and geophysicists. A lot more geophysics being used in the mining industry today. So, you know, think about the environmental challenges of exploring, producing, and recycling minerals, and the kinds of technologies that are available to us in our industry that can be used. So I'm going to conclude. I hope I showed you that there will be outstanding careers available in the energy and petroleum industry for many decades to come. It's not a dead-end career, as some people would try to make you believe. Strong technical backgrounds, though, are required. Okay? Absolutely work on becoming as technically proficient as you can and learn something about the business and demonstrate teamwork success. You know, geoscientists and engineers, you're going to be the key to building a global future. You know, as I say, I tell people, at my age, I'm here to give advice. I'm here to point the direction, to help people get over hurdles. But the solution to our energy crisis in the world, our solution to our environmental challenges is with you, the next generation. And so you need to be ready to bring strong technology to bear to try to solve some of the issues in the future. And I want to talk about some of the unique skills that geoscientists have. How many of you keep up with the fact that geoscientists are working right now on looking at geoscience on the moon, on Mars, on a number of planets? And so we have sensors on a lot of these planets, and we're looking at geophysical work on these planets to understand where the minerals are, to understand what the planet is and the moons are made of. So there is planetary geoscientists. Medical imaging. Most of the medical imaging algorithms have come from the seismic industry, right? And so imaging in the body has a lot of similarities, some differences, but it has a lot of similarities to imaging in the earth. And so if you understand geophysical imaging, okay, the opportunities for you in the medical imaging industry are significant. Smart cities, mapping where everything is underground and where it should be. Archaeology, geoarchaeology, understanding where everything is located and finding it in the subsurface. You know, geoscientists are important for measuring environmental protection, for monitoring climate change, and for doing research. Looking for water, tremendous number of geoscientists working on water management for the future. You know, water is going to be the next oil. So as we replace oil, the question is going to be, where's enough water to support the planet? Fresh drinking water. Mineral exploration I talked about. Security, remote sensing, right? Remote sensing is the area of geoscience. big data, artificial intelligence. Our data sets in the geoscience industry are easily terabytes big. Okay, and so we are the leaders of big data and using artificial intelligence and large language models. Natural hazard assessment, mudslides, earth slides, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Geoscientists are the ones who are doing the monitoring. And then, as I mentioned earlier, geotechnical engineering for where to put stuff. So there's great opportunities, a whole range of places and things you can work and do. So you guys are in the works for a great future. And finally, just thank you all for listening to me. These are some of my pictures over my career, okay, and some of the places I've been. So I thank all of you for listening, and I'll take any questions.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doc. I think this was very inspiring and informative. At this point, we would like to make it more interactive, so we have opened the floor for all the participants. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, I think this is the time for you to ask them. You can raise your hand using the raise hand feature in the Zoom app, and then we will open the floor for you. If you have any questions, something specific you would like to ask about Dr. Rocky's geoscience journey, this is the time for you to ask.
And don't be shy. Anybody with their hand raised? You know, in my career, if nobody asked me a question, then I would ask others questions. So Prosper. Prosper, you have your hand up?
Prosper, kindly unmute yourself and ask your question.
Well, I don't hear anyone asking. Did Prosper have a hand up? If not, I see Maximilian with a hand up.
Okay, Maximilian, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening from here.
Oh, okay.
Good evening.
I would like to find out whether you have a picture of the prospects in natural hazards assessment in our part of the world here in Africa. How does the outlook like? I'm into that area as an early career scientist, geoscientist. I would like to find out whether it's a good prospect to explore. Thank you.
Yeah, so a great question. So let's talk a little bit about the petroleum industry in Africa. So, you know, Africa is one of the places where there is an incredible need for energy equity yet. And so there is a strong need to continue to find hydrocarbons and to generate electricity and to spread that electricity, you know, to do that in the most environmentally friendly way possible, and to spread that energy across the significant number of people on the continent who still don't have access to it. So that means that the hydrocarbon industry, petroleum industry, is still a very active industry in Africa. Now, where is it? You know, where is it going? The problem, I won't say it's a problem. The challenge for you is not only is there lots of opportunity in the petroleum industry in Africa, there's also lots of competition, right? So there are many people studying in Africa and studying abroad who are from Africa or will go back to Africa, who want to work in the petroleum industry there, and that makes it a very challenging place if you can get your foot in the door with a company to do geoscience or engineering in the petroleum industry in Africa. You should take advantage of that because that's where you can demonstrate the skills that I told you needed to have. And remember, you have to be really good technically. Now, so there's lots of opportunity, but lots of competition. Sometimes in other places in the world, there is less competition, right? So for instance, the competition for highly technical people in some of the other large companies or even national oil companies in South America, in the Middle East, maybe even in Southeast Asia, they don't have access to as many highly qualified technical people. So they will often hire good technical people to come over there. So I think the opportunity is good. I think when you cast your net, cast it wide, right? Don't think, even if you want to, you should cast it, to not only companies in Africa where you want to be, or to other companies outside of Africa that you may want to be, but cast it across a number of areas, and then slowly work your way up that career ladder until you end up where you want to be. Did that help?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Rocky.
Yes.
I have a question.
Okay.
When I was reading your profile, I realized that you hold a PhD in nuclear science from the Ohio State University, and then now you are rocking it in the geoscience field. So I would like to know what actually made you switch from nuclear science to geoscience.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I got my PhD in 1981. In the 1980s, if you had a degree in nuclear physics, the job opportunities in nuclear physics that were available to you were, one, to be an assistant professor at a university, and most of the full professorship positions were already full and tenured and not likely to open up for 20 years. Okay, so that wasn't really a good option. The second is to take a postdoc position at a national laboratory, and could have done that. But the issue there is postdoc positions don't pay very well, and they're the only thing you can go to after a postdoc position is back to a university, as either stay as a postdoc or go to a university as assistant professor. And so in the nuclear, and then the other thing was to work at a national science lab on nuclear weapons, which I didn't particularly want to do, right? So the question was then, is I had good technical skills. I could program computers. I had a really strong physics background. I was good at teamwork because I worked with a large team in my thesis. So I had all the skills necessary except geology and geophysics. But the oil and gas industry, the petroleum industry back then was really looking for good technical people, and they needed a lot of them. It was a growth area. And so good technical people is what I did. So why did I change? One, because of the job opportunities. I knew the opportunities in the field that I had the major in were going to be very limited for a long time, where the opportunities in petroleum and oil and gas were very, very good. So I made the change, right? And I could make the change because of those skills I told you about. And that's what I'm telling you. In your career, if you have those technical skills and you keep yourself broad enough, okay, if the area you're working in doesn't look like that's the area you want to be in any longer, your skills could, if you have good skills, will be transferable to a different area that you might want to be in. So that's what it was for me. Good question.
Okay,
Bernard.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think I'm enlightened. Yeah.
I see Bernard's hands up.
Okay, Bernard, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Bernard, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hello, Doc. Thank you for such an inspiring presentation. And I'm glad you made mention of the fact that petroleum is going to be with us for many years to come and why we need so much energy. So I want to ask you a question about shale oil and gas exploration. Yeah, we all know recent technologies have made it possible to drill into shale formations and extract oil and gas from them.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Can you get a little closer to the microphone, Bernard?
Okay. Please, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's a little better. You just speak up a little bit so I can hear the question.
Okay. So I was glad you made mention of why we need petroleum, and then the fact that petroleum is going to be with us for many years to come. I want to ask a question about shale oil and gas exploration. We all know they have a low permeability, but then recent technology have made it possible to drill in those formations and extract oil and gas from them. And then still they are not, they are poorly quantified because the core samples needed for the necessary geochemical measurements on them are still not readily available. And so people are applying machine learning and artificial intelligence techniques to predict some of these geochemical parameters to be able to predict sweet spots in those formations to aid drilling. So I want to ask, how are these big oil companies embracing this shale and gas exploration and the use of machine learning in predicting some of these geochemical parameters? Thank you.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. So there's a couple different parts of the question. One is about efficiency. Okay. And obviously companies look for any way, including machine learning, to be as efficient as possible. And they're also looking to have as low of a carbon footprint as possible. So, let me give an example. I found a prospect. I acquired seismic data. First of all, did you acquire seismic data with an electric boat, or did you acquire it with a boat burning diesel? Okay, because that has a carbon footprint. So your seismic data has a carbon footprint. And now you're going to drill a well. What kind of drill rig are you going to use? Are you going to use an electric drill rig? Are you going to use and if so, where's the electricity coming from? Is it coming from the grid, or is the electricity coming from natural gas or from some other way? Okay, or is your drill rig burning diesel again? Okay, and so it's about what your footprint looks like and how do you be most efficient. Now, in terms of hydrocarbons and shale, first of all, Africa has a lot of hydrocarbons left to be found and produced, a tremendous amount. When I was working there, I could find hydrocarbons all over the place, right? The key thing is were they economic, right? Were they small? Were they too far away? Were they too expensive? Why would you go after the expensive stuff when there's cheap stuff, right, to do? And so, but there's plenty of hydrocarbons in Africa. Africa has a tremendous amount of hydrocarbons left. And so there's always going to be opportunity. Now, if you compare that in the U.S., where most of the hydrocarbons that are available, free hydrocarbons that are available, have already been produced, okay? The hydrocarbons that are left are expensive to get. And so shale and fracking for shale gas and oil, which is allowable and very profitable in the U.S., does have a carbon footprint, and they do use machine learning to try to make that more efficient, more effective, and to try to reduce the carbon footprint of it. But I will say, the only reason shale oil and shale gas exist in many, many parts of the world, the reason you don't explore for it in those parts of the world is, one, it's either too expensive, or two, the resources are owned by the government. Remember, in the United States, oil and gas onshore, on land, is owned by the mineral rights owner. It's owned by individuals. It's not owned by the government. The only place the government in the United States owns the oil and gas is offshore, is under the water, right? So because of that, the opportunity to look for oil and gas in those areas and the support of the community and the people living there is very different than in a country where if I have a piece of land and the government wants to go look for oil and gas on it, but I don't get anything out of it, why would I let them? So part of it is the economics, part of it is the environment of the legal environment of it all. But there is a lot of machine learning. All the companies are using it. The companies now are starting to employ artificial intelligence for a number of areas. With the machine learning, there's a lot of monitoring going on now, monitoring of individual pieces of equipment, not only monitoring the drill rig to make it more effective, but also monitoring things like turbines and pumps to identify when they're getting near the end of their life. So you can determine that ahead of time by just monitoring the way they operate, how they vibrate, what their sounds are like. Again, all falls back to geophysics, capturing the acoustics and then analyzing the acoustics and using machine learning to identify what that means. So, and by the way, a lot of companies like Amazon, Google, all the big Microsoft, they're all working with oil and gas industry as partners to deal with big data, do large language models and artificial intelligence, machine learning. So
Okay.
hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay. What else?
Is there any more questions? If you have any questions or comments, kindly raise your hand to be called upon.
So this is an
If you are
opportunity
shy,
for you to
can
ask
type
questions.
them
There
in
you
the
go.
chat system and we will read it out for Dr. Rocky to answer.
Ah,
Okay, Edmond. Edmond, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. It's actually not like a question, it's just a comment. Since you said we could also make comments. And what I want to say is I really enjoyed the presentation because I'm actually in the energy field here, but I also have a little background in the geotechnical engineering. So to actually get this insight that the oil and gas industry is not going to go down anytime soon, and the reasons why that is going to happen is actually quite comforting. And you can also use some of this information that has been gathered to sort of like inform my colleagues and get them to also understand the energy trends and the differences in reasons for energy usage in the developing world and the developed world. So I'm just very thankful and grateful for this kind of presentation. Thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Edmund. And be aware that having a strong geotechnical background, especially like in geoengineering or anything like that, and then if you can, like I said before, if you can couple that with something on the broader geoscience side, whether it's, I understand seismic, or I understand how to interpret and measure the shallow surface, the upper, say 300, 400, 500, 600 feet of the surface. That is very valuable. It's valuable because you need to know it for wind. You need to valuable for looking for minerals. It's valuable for mining. It's valuable for pipeline, right? It's valuable for many, many different things. And so if you have that kind of expertise, then you can see there's a lot of different industries that you can go out and seek employment at. So good point.
Yes, thank you.
I see a couple of I see a couple of notes in the chat. Is there any way you can reach me via email? So I'm pretty easy to find on, there are not many people. You see my name right underneath it's Rocco DeTomo. There are no other Rocco DeTomos in the entire world. So if you look up my name online, Facebook, LinkedIn, anywhere you will find me, and I'm not hard to find. So feel free to try to reach out. I think that's pretty easy. If you want to contact me specifically via email, I'd say go through Cyril. He knows my email, and he can connect you to me. So yeah, so I would say you could send me emails, but if I get too many emails, I'm not likely to look at them all. I already get about 200 emails a day. You might try to just go ahead and connect with me on LinkedIn, okay, or to follow me on LinkedIn or one of the social media areas. I'm on Slack as well. If you use Slack, LinkedIn, Facebook, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm pretty out there on social media. But if you're really desperate, go onto social media and ask me for my email, or ask Cyril for it. Okay, Emmanuel, had your hand up?
Yes, Doc, I would like to know your take on this question. With your decades of years of experience in the industry, whether it is advisable for you to specialize in one field, as in being a geophysicist or a hydrogeologist, as compared to having bits of experience in hydrogeology, geophysics, data analysis, health and safety in the field, so that if there is an opportunity, you know that you can fit in all, rather than having so much experience or focusing in one of the numerous that I make mention of.
Yep. Yeah, so that goes back to my comment. Thank you for that question, Emmanuel. It goes back to my comment earlier. If you're working in hydrology, you want to be the best hydrologist that you possibly can be, right? You want to be the best technical hydrologist, the best teammate, the best at that. But you don't want to ignore the other things, because you never know if you're working in a particular area, like let's say you're working in hydrology in Ghana, and all of a sudden the funding for it dries up, or the company you're working for gets bought out or goes bankrupt, right? You don't want to say, well, the only thing I can do is hydrology, because that's not true. You have the skills to do other stuff, and you need to keep in touch with those other things enough that you can do it. I'll give you an example from myself. I started off when I first came on board, as a seismic data processor, okay, because I understood I understood programming of computers, I understood physics and math, okay, and so processing seismic data and making those little wiggles on a piece of paper was pretty straightforward. But I didn't understand anything about how the data was acquired, so I was lucky enough then to go in the field and actually work with a crew that actually collected the data and gave it back to my team for seismic data processing. Well, then I understood a lot more, right? But now that I had the data, I started asking questions like, well, tell me what we're looking for. Tell me why it's important that we get this data a certain way, and start interpreting it. And then what I found was I started developing the questions and the skills to become a seismic interpreter. So I started interpreting very simple geologies in the first place. And I knew enough about seismic data acquisition and processing that I'd go back and say, hey, no, I want you guys to do this different. Once I became an interpreter, okay, and because I knew so much about the other things, then I became a more senior interpreter. And then they said, well, we're going to put you in a more difficult area. We not want you to interpret in deep water, and we want you to interpret subsalt. So very difficult interpretation, but I knew what the limits of the seismic data were, and I could go back and say, no, we need to acquire that data differently. So I was one of the first people that made us acquire wide azimuth seismic data, right? And the reason is, as I said, you're never going to get a picture that you want to see by just doing seismic acquisition in the marine world the way you're doing it. You have to see something from the side. You have to see it from all different angles. And so they actually convinced them to go out and acquire a survey. And voila, that was great, great. Okay, so now we start acquiring lots of surveys like that. Now we get really good interpretations. Now I start becoming a deep water advisor, saying, you're really good at deep water. You should go around the rest of the world and tell them how to do deep water, right? So that's how I started doing that. Then they said, you know what? Why don't you build a platform and actually develop it now? So, so your career built and built and built until the point that you're managing larger groups. You starting to see the whole value chain of how we get from the beginning to the end of what happens in the petroleum industry. And the same thing's true in the hydrology industry. The same thing's true in the wind energy. The same thing's true in geothermal. And the same thing's true in carbon capture. Those are all, you need to understand what's the data. What do I need to know from the data? How do I do it better? What does it all mean? What are the results? And how do those results impact the decisions we make? Okay?
Okay,
so,
thank you.
Yeah. Keep yourself real specific, but know what's going on generally. And then when you switch, become really specific at something else. What else?
Are there any more questions? Okay, so I think this is where we draw the line. I'd like to say a very big thank you to each and every participant here for making this event a success. A very big thank you to our incredible speaker, Dr. Rocky, for sharing with us your experiences and all of that. We believe that each and every one of you has taken something home, will take something home. And then before we even conclude, I would like us to carry out a very simple exercise. I would like us to put on our cameras. We want to capture this fantastic moment with a group picture. So we want every one of us to put on our cameras, share those wonderful smiles as we make this gathering a memorable one. So I'm putting on my camera. I hope you do so too.
Yeah, I see Alfred's got his on. There we go. Well, here you are, Ba, Kofi, Felix. Yeah, Edmund. By the way, I guess you probably all noticed from my biography there that I actually lived in Lagos, Nigeria for 5 years.
Yeah, so easy for you to put on your cameras. I think half of us to have our cameras off. And kindly put on your camera. We want to capture this wonderful moment.
Yep. Turn them all on so you can get a good snapshot of all. I think I see 30 windows on here right now. It's like about half of you.
So thank you all for making this program a success. We believe you carry this energy through your geoscientific pursuits. And then until then, I think, okay, so I'll hand over to Dr. Boateng to give us the closing remarks before we officially close the meeting.
Okay, so thank you very much all for joining. I want to especially thank Rocky. Like you mentioned, we met, I think that was 10 years ago. Is it? No, more than 10 years ago, yes.
Yeah, more than 10 years.
When Rocky was in Ghana for the SEG honorary lecture, Middle East and Africa honorary lecture. And since then, he has always been available to advise me on my part. Like I always say, he was the first person to say you should follow the machine learning and artificial intelligence line. And it's been very helpful in my career. So I'm very grateful to him. And I also want to thank him for just making the time for this particular program and to share his knowledge and experience. Rocky, we are very grateful and we hope we can call on you at any time as we go for it. All right. So thank you very
All right.
much all for joining. The next Geo Cafe will be next month. So look out for the flyers and then get ready to join. Thank you. Have a good evening. All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks to all of you. Bye-bye.